So we're going to talk about the Telos Triangle and the Community Capital Tool. John is the research manager for the Telos Institute at Tilburg University in the Netherlands. Next slide. And he's really the person responsible for this triangle. They use this triangle of ecological, social, and economic capital, sometimes people, planet, profit. John and I met at a conference in 2009, next slide, when I was working on the 4th edition, the 2012 edition of my book, Towards Sustainable Communities, and using this framework, this community capital framework with 6 forms of capital. And John and I quickly realized that we were talking about very, very similar things, and that I was working on a tool that was quite similar to the tool that they were working with at Telos. So we've been working together, and he actually helped write the chapter on this tool in my book. Next slide, please. So what we've done is go from framework to tool. There's these 6 forms of capital. Most of you are familiar with at least natural capital and social capital. Here we also have physical, economic, human, and cultural capital. And within each of these forms of capital, there are a series of smaller subsections, just like you've seen in all of these other presentations. So moving on. So the Telos model is to take each capital, to break it down into stocks, and then requirements, and then indicators, and that's essentially the kind of work that we have done. I'm not going to repeat that because it's very similar to what you've heard from everybody else. Please go on. So what it looks like is this. If you look from the right to the left, this is an example where we take an indicator, in this case native plant preservation. We say, okay, the goal is 100%. Here we are at 65%. That's part of a stock of biodiversity, which has a composite score. That, in turn, the biodiversity is part of the stock of natural capital. And natural capital is one of the forms of capital. We get this overview, sustainability hexagon, which starts to tell you something very interesting. So if we'll go to the next slide, what we get is these very simple visual assessment results based on a whole lot of data, but made accessible. So you can look, we've actually got 2 instruments. One is what we call the sustainability balance sheet on the left, and the other the community capital scan. So the balance sheet is an assessment tool, and by looking at this, you can very, very quickly say, okay, so we're doing really well in terms of physical, social, and cultural capital in this case, but not so well in terms of human, economic, and natural capital. And we can track this over time, and we can break it down into various pie charts and so on. The Community Capital Scan is a decision support tool, which can be done in a group like this, or online, or both. And it's a way to see what people agree on and disagree on. That scatter diagram at the bottom is a way to tell, in this case, what the range of input is, and whether we, if we agree on 80% of the issues but disagree on those 20, we can make a choice to focus on the 80 and put the 20 aside, or focus on the 20 and leave the 80 aside. Whatever we would choose to do, it's a way to move the whole discussion along. And finally, so what are the benefits and risks? The benefits of both of these instruments are that it's the balance sheet in particular, it's rigorous and reliable. It's visual and accessible, it's comparable, easily customized and repeatable. And with the scan, it's very quick. It can be done in a couple of hours or half a day, and it provides focus. This balance sheet is supposed to be over on the risk side, so the risks, or the balance sheet it's time consuming, it's labor intensive, and John might be able to talk a bit about how they've worked on that, because they now have done this with the entire 403 municipalities in the Netherlands. There's issues about data quality and data context and scale. There's issues about strategic context and support. It really helps to be doing this in the context of an official community plan or some kind of planning process where you know this is going to fit in. There's fear of judgment. A lot of people with these assessment tools are worried that that it is they who are being assessed as opposed to the outcomes that are being assessed. So obviously we're trying to work with local authorities and others who are worried about how the public is perceiving them. There's fear of judgment. And there's also concern that commitment, strategic commitment may wane over time. And with the scan, because it's kind of a quick and dirty tool as opposed to a more rigorous assessment tool, it really depends on who's there, who's putting in inputs, what kinds of inputs those are, and the results are unique, and they're not as rigorous as with the balance sheet. And I think that's my last slide. So any questions? John, anything to add?
Sorry?
Do you want to add anything to that extremely quick overview?
No, not really for the moment.
Okay.